that the term salvage has always been a scary term for the industry. Nobody wants to call out a salver. Nobody wants to have a salvage incident. And we're meeting people on their worst days.
Welcome to the Shipping Podcast, where I meet interesting maritime professionals sharing their passion for the shipping industry and their everyday job. I am your host. My name is Lena Gosberg. Hello, Shipping Podcast listeners. Thank you for tuning in. This is the 177th episode of the Shipping Podcast. And today we will be returning to a former guest on the Shipping Podcast. It's a follow-up with Lindsay Malen Habib, who changed her career and went into salvage, where she has been a trailblazer and became the first female president of the American Salvage Association. Lindsay just handed over the presidency to her successor, but this is her story. I hope you will enjoy our conversation and learn something new about salvage. Welcome to the Shipping Podcast. Could you please introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Lindsay Malen Habib, and I'm the president of the American Salvage Association. Thanks so much, Lena, for having me back again.
Yeah, you're back. You're the first guest that has sort of come back in a new episode. So the last time we spoke was in 2017, in March. It was released in March, even though we met, I think, during the WISTA International meeting at the Koningsdam in September or something, 2016.
Yeah, that's right.
At that point, you worked for another company. You worked for a telemedical company called Future Care. What has happened since then?
Well, since then, I've returned to the salvage industry. I became the client services manager at Resolve Marine Group, who is a U.S.-based but international global salvage emergency response and wreck removal provider. And as that progressed, I ran for secretary-treasurer of the American Salvage Association, which is our industry organization or the voice for the American, South American, and Central American salvage industry. We act as an organization that represents the industry to Congress, Coast Guard, and Navy. And I was elected as the first female on the leadership committee, where I became secretary-treasurer. And as the time has progressed now, I've become the first female president of the American Salvage Association.
Congratulations to the Salvage Association, I would say.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
So what do you do in your everyday life now then? What is your work? What do you do?
What I do is more of a business development and client relations side in terms of Resolve Marine Group. I kind of act as the face for Resolve with our ship owning clients, as well as the international insurance market, the pool of P&I clubs, as well as underwriters and other marine insurers, ship managers as well. I go out and I explain the services that we provide. Here in the United States, it's a very unique because as opposed to anywhere else in the world, we have salvage regulations here. So under OPA 90, the Oil Pollution Act of 1990, there is a requirement that any ship owner or operator with a vessel over 400 gross tons must be pre-contracted, which is what is known as a salvage marine firefighting provider. There's only 3 of them in the United States, Resolve being one of them. And what we do is we are listed in the ship owner's vessel response plan. And in the case that they have a casualty in the United States, the U.S. Coast Guard and their qualified individual or representative here in the United States will activate their vessel response plan. And in turn, the salver will be activated. And the salver, the reason that the Coast Guard and the industry, which the American Salvage Association was actually instrumental in implementing these regulations, along with Congressman Elijah Cummings, we really pushed for this proactive approach to salvage as opposed to just focusing on oil spill response, because the idea is that the salver keeps the oil in the ship and can get to a casualty to mitigate an incident before the oil touches the water and prevent further loss of life, casualty, and environmental damage. This is extremely unique because we have a pre-contracted arrangement, which also saves time and money in the case of a response. So there isn't that time where you're arguing over contractual details in the case of a response. Instead, your named salver is already there deploying their equipment and personnel based on the type of response that it may be, whether it's a grounding, a collision, a fire, etc. So this is a very unique approach. And really what it's done is it's helped to mitigate the incidents that happen in the United States. It's actually an approach that now Canada and Europe are looking to possibly take as well. They are places where they take, obviously, oil spill response regulations very seriously. And this is kind of the layer above it, which would help prevent those incidents from happening. And as the American Salvage Association, we not only represent the salvage marine firefighting providers, or the majority of the salvage marine firefighting community, but also what our corporate associate members do, who are contractors to the salver or response partners, such as McAllister Towing, Crowley Maritime, Foss, Smith Maritime, different offshore construction companies, different subsea diving companies, specialized salvers, et cetera. And it gives us a forum to all get to know each other. But back to what I do is, that the term salvage has always been a scary term for the industry. Nobody wants to call out a salver. Nobody wants to have a salvage incident. And we're meeting people on their worst days. So my job is to go and meet with the ship owner and say, okay, Mr. and Mrs. Ship Owner, this is the salvage services that we provide in the United States and all of the different captain of the port zones that you must be required to have. But why not take this proactive approach a step further? And since we're a global salver and we can respond out of various warehouses throughout the world and different hubs and response locations, allow us to be your global partner. So we can actually perform exercises and drills and scenarios in different places around the world besides what's required in the United States. And then internationally, if you do have an incident, at least we've gotten to know each other proactively as opposed to reactively. So we're not getting to know each other when you're in panic over the phone saying my ship is on fire, but instead we know all of your operations personnel. We know your port captains. Our team. We've run exercises and different scenarios. And in these cases, we have these strong relationships with ship owners that previously, before the OPA 90 regulations were actually in force, we did not have. So it's very different. In addition, Resolve provides services such as ship repair and ship services and dry dock repair out of Dutch Harbor or harbor towage in Gibraltar. So we can kind of come collectively and say, okay, these are the other services that you utilize us for. And then in case of an actual ship casualty, this is what we can do to assist you in those cases. So it's interesting. And it's also great for the insurance market and the P&I clubs because they're the ones who are going to really be footing the bill if it's a major casualty or a larger incident above the owner's deductible. And in that case, what I've put together is a loss prevention seminar program for our P&I club clients, where we bring together all of their claims handlers from around the world. We bring together our commercial people, our operations people, our client services people, and we introduce them, we run scenarios, we go over salvage contracting because that's where things can get the most confusing when they go above a emergency response and they turn into a wreck removal, say, for example. And we go over the different funding agreements and contracts that we have as well. and then also how their owners would react and how they would react. A lot of times we'll also bring in companies like Widow O'Brien's or MTI, who will also do crisis management. So looking at how the whole spectrum and different facets of a casualty are actually performed, and then how they would work with Resolve or a SUPSALV or similar to Resolve. So that's been a great program that has certainly, I think, enlightened a lot of the P&I clubs and kind of broke that awkward barrier, because we really do need to all look together to solutions, because the greater idea is that we are protecting the environment, and it runs on all of us as an industry.
Yeah, what do you see? I mean, ship owners are usually, they are used to risk management and to have a look at what is the worst possible case and so on. But still, they don't want to talk to salvage people.
Yeah.
Or what do you think? What has changed?
Well, I think the OPA 90 regulations have kind of forced us to get to know each other. I also think that in this world, there is not really the room for the old-fashioned salver that's a one-hit quit, that's going to come in and take a Lloyds Open Forum and just take as much as they can get. Not to say that Lloyds Open Forum isn't appropriate in many places. Your ship is on fire and it's going to save money and it's going to help protect the casualty and so on. But there are older salvers and smaller salvers that have been known to take advantage of ship owners. So this really has left a bad taste in people's mouths. I'm not going to lie. We've been known as pirates for a long time, but we're not pirates. I mean, my joke is, pirates don't wear pink dresses like I do, but hey, you never know. So the idea that these regulations are enforced, now we're forced to get to know each other. Now we attend larger tabletop exercises and run these scenarios with qualified individuals, with very high level ship owners, with the oil majors, et cetera. And they're not afraid to engage the salver. So I always say, there's no cost to put us on notice. So you pick up the phone and, you say, we've had a grounding. We don't know how serious it is, but why don't we take a look, have a look at the resources that are available nearby, see what we can do in case things do go to the next level. And if they don't, that's great. Well, if they do, at least we're prepared, because in the end, what we're doing at that point is we're mitigating costs. We're protecting the vessel, we're protecting life, and we're protecting the environment. And the insurers are also going to respect an owner that has a relationship with salvers who they're familiar with. Globally, we probably have 4 or 5 companies that really do the major work, and they're trusted names who have been in the industry for a very long time. Other organizations, such as the American Salvage Association, has allowed us to have an industry voice where we educate Congress on what it is that we do. That here in the United States, we've filled up every captain of the port zone with so much equipment, and we sit there having to run and exercise that equipment, which is extremely costly, and upkeep it and improve it, that we've actually exported it internationally. So now you see many US salvers doing the global work. And that, I think, is a great result of this change. We're also working very closely with the U.S. Coast Guard and U.S. Coast Guard CERT, their engineering response teams. We're also work very closely with SUPSALV, the salvage division of the U.S. Navy, as well as NOAA and BSSEE and various other government organizations and NGOs. So we all know who we are together, so we can come up with other proactive ideas. So, for example, in Alaska is so large and so vast that they cannot meet the U.S. planning standards for response timeframes under the salvage marine firefighting regulations. So instead, they provide a alternative planning criteria, is what they call it, and its focus is on spill response. But when we sit down with the ASA leadership and we sit down with Coast Guard and CERT and SUPSALV and the various environmental organizations and say, what is it that you need? We know that having more equipment up there can only do good. Resolve, for example, has the only privately funded salvage tug in the Americas, situated up in Dutch Harbor, Alaska. That's a great response vessel. They take a salvage approach to spill response, hoping to keep the oil in the ship. But if it does hit the water, they actually are a U.S. Coast Guard approved oil spill response provider. So there's interesting things like that allow us to come up with different dynamics and problem solutions that has really, helped us get out of that view of piracy and instead look at how resourceful we are, how our research and development continues on despite a casualty actually occurring. And overall, as an industry, when we look at major casualties that are occurring, for example, with all these major, very large container vessels or car carriers, such as the Golden Ray here in the United States, we can see what are some industry theme problems that are happening. If we're looking at these major container vessels and how to fight a shipboard fire on a container vessel of these magnitudes, we have to look at it as an industry whole. We have to look at it with the underwriters, with the insurers, with the various salvers, with the owner operators, with the charterers, et cetera, to say, what can we do to not make a bigger problem? And so, it's quite different and exciting, and it's not what it used to be. Now people are happy to see their salver, mostly for a drink. And they still don't want to see them, but at least that you're going to call somebody that you trust. And something that I try and implement as a client service manager is that trust. And something that I have tried to do for the American Salvage Association is to continue to drop that stigma of the salver and to say that we're really your partners in compliance and we're your partners in protecting the environment and your property.
But isn't there a sort of a tradition of, salvage? The Lloyds open form, it costs as much because it depends on how much you can salvage. So There is that incentive in that for people to save as much as possible of a big chunk, because that gives you more money in your own pocket in a way. So isn't that sort of a stigma? Isn't that part of the stigma?
Yeah, I would say it is part of the stigma, but I'd also say that it's been kind of part of my job to educate on the Lloyds Open Forum. It's one of the oldest salvage contracts, and it's still in place because it works. And the truth is, you do need incentive. We go out as salvers and we risk our lives. Everybody is being evacuated from the vessel, and we are deploying to the vessel. We are putting out our resources, equipment, and personnel in very dangerous situations. The Lloyds Open Forum, in its natural contract, is a great agreement, especially if you're looking, say, for example, at a ship fire, and we're sending out tugs and firefighting vessels and personnel, because then they all fall under the LOF. And it actually saves the ship owner money, because rather than paying out of pocket, it goes under the bigger half. And then, yes, we work on a bonus basis. So technically, it's a settlement of what we've salved. And as a salver, as I mentioned before, our job is protection of property, life, and environment. In addition, to be honest, the only person that's really looking out for the interest of the property of the vessel at that point is the salvor. So they're the ones who are going to be trying to do everything for there not to be a constructive total loss and something to be a wreck removal, or for a vessel to sink and be, a total loss in that view. So I think it just takes a matter of education. They're very, very successful LOFs. There are other LOFs that are still out there. Somebody could be off the Caribbean in a mega yacht and they have a grounding, and Salvor comes and says, you signed this contract. And the next thing you know, they own your yacht, when all they've simply done is, towed you off a sandbar. But that's not something that the ASA members are getting into. And that's not something that the big global salvers, Resolve, Smiths, Spitzer, TNT, et cetera, are doing out there. So, I think that when we put together our funding agreements, for example, there's going to be a listing of all the different salvage contracts that are out there because every incident is different. They're never the same. And so it's going to require a different type of agreement. Just let's not negotiate on pricing while your ship is burning or while fuel is getting into the water or cargo or whatever it may be. Instead, let's focus on being proactive.
And how is it to be a woman in that world of maritime?
It's different. I definitely got some heat when I was elected as Secretary Treasurer, as well as when I became the president of the American Salvage Association. I'd like to say I was previously with Future Care when we met last, and that is a family-run business that was founded by my mother, Christina DeSimone, who's the CEO and founder. And prior to that, I had been in salvage for many years, and with her again before that, for many years before that, about 16 years in the industry now, 10 in salvage. And I would like to say that she in the 80s, she really faced it, and she broke through glass ceilings and so on. But in truth, we all know that we are in an extremely male-dominated industry. And when it look at salvage, it's even more male-dominated. An article I wrote about 5 years ago for the American Salvage Association Soundings magazine was called Women in Salvage. And it was really cool. And it was so well received that the International Salvage Union actually had me give a presentation on women in salvage. Now, a 30-minute presentation on women in salvage is kind of hard to do because truthfully, there's not that many women in salvage. But we do have some unbelievable women, some wonderful female salvage masters, female salvage engineers, divers, people on the senior leadership side, et cetera, people who run salvage companies. The ISU had their first female president, which was very impressive. And I think the truth is how I feel when I go out on a project and I put on my coveralls, I don't feel different than anybody else, and I believe that when you get down to business and you're out there and people are doing the work, that they're all treated the same, no matter their color of their skin or their sex or where they're from, you're part of a team, you're part of a collective there to do the right thing. Not to say there aren't problems, on projects and out there, just like we see on board vessels with female crew. And if there's a shortage of female crew, there's even more of a shortage of female salvage crew. But all we can do is really take it at one step at a time. So, little plugs or, guys that can't help themselves but poke in the way they want to. When I was elected and became ASA president, I let roll right off my sleeves. It means nothing in the big picture of what I do. And in truth, I love a challenge. The last 2 years as the president of the American Salvage Association, we've done wonderful things. We've faced COVID challenges. And despite COVID, we've gone out and all of our members have successfully responded. We've strengthened our relationship despite other salvers in terms of our relationships with the U.S. Coast Guard and the Navy. We've done multiple online trainings and virtual trainings with the various CERT offices, the engineering and response teams of Coast Guard, and various different Coast Guard senior leadership. We've expanded the ASA membership, created various other committees. We spend a lot of time lobbying with Congress, spent a lot of time on different issues that are facing the United States, such as merchant mariner credentials and Subchapter M. And, we've prevailed. And as far as I'm concerned, the fact that I'm a woman or a man doesn't matter as long as we're doing the work.
Thank you for that. I believe so too, but I think also we have a responsibility to be role models for the younger women entering into the industry and also for the younger men, because it's important for everyone to see that it's not one mold for every leader and they don't have to look the same, all of them.
I agree. And, I've been an active, we met at the WISTA conference. And I've been an active WISTA member for 15 years. And to me, that organization is priceless. And the idea of mentorship for women, and whether your mentors are women or men or whatever it is, just mentorship, because we have a shortage of young people, as we all know in the industry. We have these huge gap, right, where you'll see old gray beards and then younger people because of the big, crisis in the 80s. And we saw a lot of people flee the industry and so on. So there's this big age discrepancy. So I had helped found or co-founded the first U.S. chapter of Young Shipping Professionals. And I started the Young Shipping Professionals of Houston. And that was a big progressive. And then now we see with WISTA growing and their mentorships and other similar organizations to them. So we, like you said, we have a responsibility to not only just educate and mentor women, but also young men into the industry and to be diversified as much as possible. And I think when we look at studies overall, whether there's studies of Fortune 500 companies and publicly traded companies, or there's studies of ship owners and publicly traded ship owners and cruise lines, when there are women in leadership positions, they tend to thrive. And I think it's that diversity of ideas and opinions and outlooks on how we do things. Now, I have a daughter of my own, and although she's only 6, it's something that I continually repeat, is that she can be anything that she wants to be. And, for myself, I had been married to a salvage master, as well as the former managing director of Titan Salvage, Captain Rich Habib. And I'll never forget when I was pregnant, because I had worked my whole life and it was towards the end of my pregnancy. And I did speak at the American Salvage Association, 8 months pregnant. And that scared the crap out of a lot of people. They never saw a pregnant woman in high heels, I think, at the American Salvage Association. So that kind of threw everybody off. But he said to me, Lindsay, I will support you in whatever you want to do. If you want to be a stay-at-home mother, or if you want to be a working mom and you want to travel, we'll make it work together as a team. And that was the most important thing he could have said to me. Even just to hear those words meant everything to me, because I love my work and I love what I do. But for me, I love being a mother above all and everything. But we learned how to merge those things, especially during COVID and quarantine. I had my daughter doing kindergarten on the iPad, as well as, writing in all these books I ordered for her and trying to set up stimulation while I sat here and ran loss prevention seminars with the Thomas Miller, the UK club, or whoever it may be. And, she listens and she hears, and, she thinks she wants to be a salver right now. And a performer. But the point is, we're constantly role models, and the children are constantly learning, and our industry is constantly evolving. And for me, I grew up with a single working mother, and I respect her now more than ever. It's just amazing, what a woman can do when they put their mind to it. And since I've been a widow the last 5 years, it's a challenge, but I think that my husband would be proud. And I certainly feel very proud.
I think you should be. Of course you should be. But I think it's time for us to also identify the men who wants to change in the industry and start collaborating with them. Because, it's not the women's job to actually achieve diversity. It's all of us together that needs to do that. Yeah. And without the men who wants to change, we can't change it on our own.
No, it's definitely a collective, and it has to be an industry goal. And that's why it was wonderful to see IMO have a, women.
We will be looking forward to the May 18th. It's Women in Maritime Day. I think they announced that from the IMO. That will be great next year.
It'll be wonderful. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that we're seeing it, but we've got a lot of work to do. And it'll be one of those things that we're constantly working on, forever, because diversity it evolves, and we really do need to see change out there. And yes, I agree 100%. It has to be a collective. And luckily for me, for example, when I went to work for Resolve Marine, their founder, Joe Farrell, he understood that I was a single mom. He understood my capabilities and my experience, and he was extremely flexible when I first started. And he continued to be that way. And he respected me when I wanted to run as Secretary Treasurer of the American Salvage Association, and my organization supported that and the time and the effort that I would need to put into it to achieve those goals in addition to my usual responsibilities. And it's people like that who encourage you, that make you feel, okay, I can go out and I can do this. It takes those type of leaders. And so I'm really grateful for that.
How many members are there in the Salvage Association in the US?
We have 6 general members, and then we have over 50 corporate associate members and over about 40 or 50 individual associate members. And I'd say, the corporate associate members are who make up the bulk. And those are, some of the companies I had mentioned, and they're a fantastic group. And the general members, they take on a lot of financial responsibility and leadership roles as well. And most recently, we've actually expanded our executive committee to have more of our corporate associate members involved. We have South American members such as Busca and Teleres. We have companies, I mentioned McAllister, but Hanson Maritime, Gloston, Crowley, Diving Services, LA Carriers, Pacific Maritime, Stevens Towing. It's a very big group, and it's fantastic to have everybody's different views. And so that was part of my leadership efforts, was to, one, rewrite the bylaws, because when I first took a look at them, there wasn't the word she, there was only he. And I said, well, we've broke all those because I'm the new ASA president here. And then 2, to expand the executive committee to be more inclusive of the corporate associate members who really make up the meat of our organization, and let them have more of a role in the direction of the organization. Because the goal is to be able to all work together. And although we might compete different places around the world, around the United States, the bottom line is we're friends, and we're able to share ideas and share thoughts and share resources, especially during COVID, when things couldn't be deployed and personnel couldn't be moved. And we were able to work together like that. That is a huge effort. And to make changes. And that's why organizations like the American Salvage Association and the International Salvage Union are so important to the industry, to give that voice and to be inclusive. So,
how long is your time in office? Is there a time limit, or is it for life?
Well, it's not for life, thankfully, because it's a non-paying job. But actually, my term is coming up. It's a 2-year term. We will have our annual general meeting at this year's Workboat Show in New Orleans. And I will have my final meeting and turn my presidency over to the vice president, Mr. Mike Jarvis from North Star Marine. I will sit as the immediate past president for the next 2 years. And then something that we have formed during my presidency is a past president's committee. And so I'll sit on the past president's committee. And that's a really great committee, because it's pretty much, well, it's all men but me now, but it's all of those who helped to found the ASA, to help forge the salvage marine firefighting regulations in place, who have faced lots of different changes in the organization and can really give great feedback to the leadership and to the whole. So we're excited about that committee as well. So I look forward to continuing to participate with the American Salvage Association for the next 2 years as past president, and then in the past president's committee. But my time is almost up. So that's a good thing.
There will be new challenges for you. I know you. So
yeah,
I think there will be.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
But do you see any trends when it comes to claims or emergency? I mean, are there more groundings, or are there more fires, or what is the trend on that one?
It's interesting, because I think I always get that question when I do an interview. And obviously we look at our ASA member statistics. We look at the statistics from the ISU members for Lloyds open forums and various size claims. We work with the clubs and we look at their claims. It's so hard to predict salvage, I'll never forget, for example, working for Titan Salvage, which is no longer in existence. And I was their director of business development, and they were a subsidiary of Crowley Maritime. In Crowley, you have liner vessels and you have tug and barges, and you see slow and steady growth, constantly increasing, on that diagonal, hopefully upward line. And then you have the salvage industry, and you have this one-off Titan, and we're trying to project our financials for the next 5 years. And all you see is up and down and up and down and up and down, because you really cannot predict when you're going to have a casualty or what your overhead is going to be or what you're going to be making to the bottom line. And you're going to be taking risk in everything that you do. But in terms of trend of claims, as I mentioned, something that we've definitely seen in the United States is less claims in the United States since the implementation of the OPA 90 salvage marine firefighting regulations. And I think that is a huge hurdle. But we do obviously still have them. We saw what happened with the Golden Ray. We have these one-off major large claims. I mean, when we had the Costa Concordia, when I was with Titan Salvage, and you simultaneously had the Rena that was run by Resolve in New Zealand, those are two of the largest, most expensive claims that had ever happened happening simultaneously. To see that again is highly unlikely, I would say. Well, when we see trends of types of claims, I'd say the biggest worry would be the very large container vessels, the growing size of container vessels, where vessels are trading, the expansion into the Arctic, response capabilities in the Arctic. I think that car carriers continue to show their instability over the years. We see many, many claims. And fires, how to fight a large marine casualty at sea when you're looking at container vessels is very, very problematic. I'll never forget, there was a response for a ro-ro barge, roll-on, roll-off barge when I was with Titan that was carrying probably about 2,000 containers. And they couldn't figure out in the roster where the containers of refrigerated chicken were compared to the containers of fully laden tank trucks. Now I am to deploy my salvage master and my marine firefighting team on board that vessel, not knowing where the next blowing up, exploding container is pretty risky business. And now when we look at it, with 50,000 containers and more and more and more, it's crazy. And the cost that it will take to respond to that casualty. And if it becomes a wreck removal, when we look at the cost of the Rena in comparison to the size of container vessels now, the amounts will be through the roof. So again, that is a collective discussion, because it's not just on the salver, it's not just on the owner, and it's not just on the insurer. It's on everybody, because we need to look at what is actually feasible. And then what kind of equipment do we need to be able to respond effectively? I mean, because the cost of putting out heavy lift assets, which are of shortage here in the United States already, and of a shortage around the world, they cannot just be stationary, because who's going to pay for it? So that's, again, a collective idea. We do need to study trends and understand, because right now, as much research and development that we all do, we have to constantly be prepared for what's next. So, yeah.
What do you see as the next? I was thinking about electrical cars. That's a different risk maybe on board a ship.
Absolutely. You're looking at a very different response capability when you're dealing with batteries. You're going to have a need for marine chemists and marine scientists that are very different, and marine engineers that are very different to what we're traditionally looking at. We have the autonomous vessel issue that's coming out there, right? What are you going to do when you don't have the manpower to actually, start your risk preparing operations on board the vessel, and you're solely coming to a casualty that you don't really have somebody to speak to that has eyes on the ground? I mean, it's a scary thought. Mm-hmm. And you have constantly different bits of technology that are out there. And then when we think about the containers that go overboard and what they're carrying, forget about being afraid of marine fuels and things of that sort. What about these nurdles, these tiny little plastic beads that you find in your child's teddy bear, or maybe melted down to make something else out of plastic, and they come out of a container and they explode all over a reef? I mean, that is a disaster. So you're looking at things that are way more dangerous than your traditional oil spill, actually.
But it also means that we need new kinds of knowledge into our industry. Because if we didn't have anyone before who knew anything about this marine, the chemical side of things, but we need them now. We didn't need them before. So that's the difference. So you are just telling everyone who's out there listening to you, yeah, this is a new kind of job you can do if you got the skill set.
Right. Well, actually, I've worked with a lot of great marine chemists, and especially with the LNG, LPG, we have had to be prepared because it's all different types of equipment that you need to create to be able to respond or to do an STS, a ship-to-ship transfer of LNG or LPG. So, there are marine chemists out there, but they're far and few in between. So I definitely challenge anyone out there who would like to find a new career to take a look at what it looks like when 1,000 Teslas blow up on a container vessel.
Well, I think there are so many things, so many new lines of occupations that we can offer, but we hardly ever tell anyone about them. It's like if we are recruiting people into the industry, we don't tell them that there are so many different paths you can go. We just tell them, enter the maritime industry and then you're in love with it, which is true. But then again, maybe we should I think that is what we are lacking when it comes to recruitment. We're not telling the young people that there are different careers you can do, but it's also you can do different jobs depending on where you are in your life cycle. I mean, when you're a parent with small children, maybe you want to do something more closer to home than being on a ship around the world or whatever. And I think that is part of what we need to do. That's our homework, what we need to put together to show that.
100%. And education is everything. The knowledge of the maritime industry, especially here in the United States, is very lacking. I told many people that I'm in the shipping industry and they think that I work for USPS or FedEx. Something that we've done with the American Salvage Association that's been a huge mission of ours is education. And we have an educational committee that includes scholarships and grants. We work very closely with NOAA, the North American Marine Environmental Protection Association. And we provide a scholarship to kids from high school through college. They enter a project, and it usually has something to do with marine engineering or marine sciences and so on. And then we vote and we bring them to an ASA annual general meeting. We introduce them to lots of players in the industry, and we give them money towards whatever their project is that they're looking at. And I think that the more we do this, the better off we are, because I've seen it myself. We've got all these young kids that are so intelligent and bursting at the seams to use what they can do and to be creative. And we bring them in as interns, and they can do so much. And the next thing you know, all the salvors are fighting over them. You really want that young blood, but education is where it's at. And there are some really cool maritime academies here in the United States. I know that's a big thing internationally as well. And I'd like to see that promoted here more in the United States. Here in Florida, we have some schools that actually have like marine biology and marine sciences as part of things that people can study in high school and so on. And I think that the earlier you can introduce this incredible industry with, like you said, all different sides and all different opportunities, the better we are. We really need to be out there doing the work and out there bringing on the next generation. And I think that goes hand in hand with the mentoring and with bringing in more women into the industry as well.
Amen to that. Yeah, that's why I started this podcast. I wanted more people to listen, to know, to understand that we are not as secretive as everyone thinks we are. And we are not boring, and we are not bold, and we are not gray-haired, and we are not bearded. Not all of us, anyhow.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, I think that's probably the most amazing thing about this podcast is it gets people interested who know nothing about the industry. And once you get on the line and you listen, you're fascinated, and you want to hear more, and you want to learn more. And that's something that shipping has been extremely behind on. I mean, I think we've seen that time and time again, where people hide behind the name and they don't come out and they're not proactive. And social media is something that you can't avoid anymore. So you need to take a hold of it. And it's either you tell everybody how they got everything sitting on their desk right now, from their coffee mug to their paper, to their computer, to their chair over here, to their home, because many people and many vessels and many containers and many things were involved in that, and all the different things that make that heroic for it to arrive by Amazon. Or you hide in the dark, and you're not going to have anybody who's going to take us forward in this world to do amazing different things while understanding that we need to protect our environment.
Yeah. There's nothing to respond to that. That is really, really well put. Well put. So who do you think I should interview the next? Who would you be interested in listening to?
I like hearing the perspective of the owner-operator. I'd really like to hear the P&I Club's perspectives. I don't think I've heard many P&I representatives on your podcast. I'd like to hear, their view on claims, and their claims, especially through COVID, because, we've all suffered with whatever has gone on these last 2 years and living through pandemic times. But I think it's nothing compared to what a lot of our seafarers have faced. And being stuck on board a ship while your family is suffering and not being able to get home is a terrifying thing. So I'd really like to understand it from a claims handler's side. Plus, obviously, from a salvage perspective, we're always interested on a P&I Club's point of view.
Yeah, no, I haven't got around to talking to the insurers at all. There are so many interesting people to talk to when it comes to ship owning and ship managers and ports and whatever. But I need to make an effort. Or maybe I'm shying away because I'm an old underwriter myself. I know too much, maybe.
Right, exactly. It's scary.
Well, thank you for taking the time to speak to me again. It was a pleasure. Thank you, Lindsay. It's always a pleasure to speak with you. Best of luck moving forward, and who knows, I might have to return to you again in the future. As I'm now planning for the spring 2022, it hit me that I am meeting so many first movers and also so many first females in their current role. Is that me, or is it a trend? I wish and I hope that it is a trend. If you have any suggestions for more interesting guests, please drop me a line at hello@shippingpodcast.com. Until the next time, from me to you, over and out. Thank you for listening to the Shipping Podcast. Don't forget to tell everyone that you meet that there is a shipping podcast available, and that they should download it and listen to the maritime professionals who are sharing their passion for the shipping industry.